what's up, comrades? Hope everyone's doing great. We're here to talk about Overlord Volume 3, and we pick up from the last book immediately. Well, actually, we don't pick up immediately. So, from last we spoke 2 weeks ago, Albedo had told Ainz that Shaltear had rebelled against the Tomb of Nazariq. We pick up here, going back a little bit in time. We're with Cebus and one of the Pleiades, and they're pretending to be like a spoiled merchant girl who's just a total asshole and like one of her servants. They're here making connections for the Tomb of Nazariq with some other merchants in the area and whatnot. They're not like in Arantel or any place we've been to before. They're like out and about doing things. And then they're also ferrying around Shaltear and a couple of her like vampire brides, which are these like sexy vampire ladies with giant tits and everything. We learn so the point of Shaltear's mission that she's out on here is to gather martial artists, or not like martial artists like a monk, like people with martial skills, martial arts, right? Which in this world are anybody who it's like a video game logic, right? It's like anybody who has like an ability that's based around a martial class, because that's not something they had in Yggdrasil. Yggdrasil is more of like a kind of like a Final Fantasy. And I got my son in the background yelling at me. We just went to the doctor because he had a non-issue that my anyway. Anyway. It's like 2 hours of my life I'll never go back for no reason. That's all. Nothing to complain about. I got a lot of videos recorded in the car as I do. So that was good. Because I'm on some extended leave from work as I transition my positions. So it gives me, I guess, some time to catch up on all this stuff. Anyway, sorry about that. So one of these shady guys, she's kind of looking into like this bandit group, and the carriage driver that's driving around is a member of like this bandit group, and so there might be someone from this bandit group that has like a powerful martial art that the Tomb of Nazariq can go like dissect him and discover like what the martial arts are all about and how they work, and maybe they can give some to some of their guys or whatnot. Anyway, so they make a big deal. They're like, we're gonna leave right now, and so the carriage driver has to like sneakily be like, oh yes, I'll prepare the carriage. And in reality, he's gonna go like tell like the bandit group to ambush this bandit, this carriage, so they can like rob the rich lady and her servants and whatnot. So after they kind of set that all up, Cebus, and there's like a whole scene in like this dining area and like this fancy restaurant. So then Cebus and the Pleiades chick go to the room, and she's like, oh, Master Cebus, because all the Pleiades are under Cebus, who's not like a floor guardian, but he's like the next best thing. He's also like a level 90 character, or whatever the highest level of the minions can be. So he's very powerful, and the Pleiades are like right below that. Let's see. And then the Pleiades girl, she like does some magic, and they're spying on him as he's like running off to like rat them out, and they're like, very good, everything's going according to plan. So this guy's name is Zach, and we learn a lot about him here in this first chapter right before he dies. I like how this does it. It's like the Necromancer in the last book. It's like you get this whole backstory, and these people are like, adios, they're dead, and they're never coming back. It's like, okay. Lord. So Zach, we pick up a Zach. He's like running to the Bandito camp, and he thinks about growing up poor in this country and how everyone's being taxed, and they were taxed more because of the war. And that one day he came home and his sister was just gone because she'd been sold into like sex slavery supposedly. And that, you know, the only way to get out of like the just rock bottom poorness is to be drafted. And he got drafted, and then he came back and he got drafted again. And then after getting drafted like the third time, he's like, I'm tired of this shit. I'm out. So he took all his gear that the kingdom had given him and like deserted. And then he met up with this bandit group, and that's how he became a part of these guys. So that's very interesting. It's good to know. It's very well written, I gotta say, because it's like we're learning about this guy and like his motivations, and it's very quick, right? It's not like a very long, drawn out thing. It's not like a whole background like some of these fucking books. These fantasy books are like 2,000 pages, and like 1,500 pages of it is like backgrounds for characters that don't mean anything. This is like a couple pages of like quick, and a lot of it is world building. It's like, oh, the things in the kingdom for the poor are not good, right? Like this is not like a benevolent kingdom that is like, you know, perfectly like JRPG where it's like everything's great and everyone's taken care of. It's like, no, this is kind of a shit kingdom, a terrible place to live unless you're like a noble or a merchant, and the people who are poor are just trying to get by. None of that matters to Ainz, but it's good. It's good world building. It like makes the world feel bigger, right, instead of smaller, because there's all this kind of like other shit going on. Anyway, enough of that rant. Okay, so then he meets up with the bandit group. Oh, first he runs into this super sketchy lady with a devil grin, and I don't think that ever comes up again in this book. Like, I was like, what? Anyway, he gets to the bandit hideout. He discusses the ambush with the boss. They're like, hey man, we maybe got like 2 hours. You got to get people over there right away. And he's like, oh man, that 2 hours is pretty quick, but okay, we'll do it. Meanwhile, then later on, Cebus, Shaltear, the Solution is her name, the Pleiades lady here, along with the vampire wives. They're all sitting in the carriage. They're talking about the mission, capturing humans with martial arts. And they talk about Shaltear and Aura's rivalry, that they're like frenemies, that they're actually best friends, but their masters created them to be like enemies, so they have to argue all the time because their masters were like brother and sister who didn't get along in real life or whatever. And then, and that's why they argue. And that, this comes up later again with Aura, but like Shaltear is like, I don't even dislike Aura at all. Like, we're friends. They just, the master asked me to like argue with her, so that's what I do. So it's kind of funny. And then she's like, what about you and Demiurge? You guys seem to hate each other, and there's no reason for that. And then Sebas is like, I don't want to talk about it. And it's like, oh, interesting. I just don't like him. And then Sebas asks, previously, Solution had asked Sebas if she could have Zach, because he talked a lot about like raping her and stuff because she's so hot, but she wants him for like stuff, and Sebas is like disgusted by the whole situation, but he promised her that he'd ask. And so he brings it up with Shaltear because she's the boss, right? It's the strongest person here, and she's like, yeah, I don't give a fuck, that's fine. So they go back and forth about why Shaltear specifically was chosen for this mission, and also about her one weakness, blood frenzy. So she is the most powerful guardian, period. Right, but she has this huge weakness, and so we learn that when you're creating characters in this Yggdrasil world, that you can give them all those extra bonuses and points and powers and stuff. But when you do that, you have to give them some weaknesses to kind of like balance it out. And so her thing is blood frenzy. Blood frenzy is when she starts getting like too much blood, she like loses her mind and will attack like anybody, including like her master or whatever. And so and she won't take orders from anybody or do anything. So Sebas is like warns her about that, and she's like, yeah, I'll be fine. So then the bandits attack. And they get the shit killed out of them by the vampires and Shaltear. Solution at some point is like, come this way, Zach. And so he goes with her, and she's like being seductive and like takes her shirt off. She's like, touch me. And he's like, hell yeah. If I'm die, at least I'm going to get some nice tits. And he puts his hand on her chest and sinks right into her. And then she like absorbs him completely with like some tentacles and whatnot, because she's actually a slime monster. So it's like Rebirth from that time. I resurrected as a slime, only like much darker. And so she's like, yummy. And so afterwards, Shaltear is like, hey, did you get that guy? And she's like, yes, I did. And it's like, oh yeah, where is he? She's like, he's still right here. I'm just eating him a tiny bit at a time. So it's like very long torture that she loves and makes her feel so good, and it fills her belly with joy, and good for Solution. They then grab some of the bandits and like knock them out, and then they're going to take them for slaves and examination and stuff. And so that's fun. Let's see. So yeah, she turns the head bandit and some other ones. Super hot. And then the group gen splits. Sebas and Solution have some other thing they got to do, and then Shaltear, she turns the head bandit into like a vampire slave, and is like, where's your base? And he's like, that way. And she's like, we're gonna go check that out. And they're like, all right, bye. And that's the last we see of Sebas and Solution for this volume. So Shaltear and her crew run through the forest. They get caught in a couple of traps because none of them, they're all like heavy hitters. They're big brutes, essentially. They have no tracking ability or scouting abilities or thieving abilities at all, so they're just like, fuck. It's like the vampire like gets a bear trap, and they have to like open the bear trap up to get her out. She's totally fine because they're like immune to physical damage, essentially. But it's still kind of like annoying. They got to keep doing this. But still. So anyway, they find the cave, they kill the guards at the head outside, and then we head inside. And we flip over to Brand. Who's Brand? Brand's a member of this bandit group. And then we get his like crazy backstory. He's a warrior. He's almost as good as Gazov Stranov, the guy from the first book. They had like a duel one time, and he barely lost and stuff. And then he spent all his time like mastering his capabilities and his martial arts and everything, so that he could beat Gazov someday. And then he also recounts how he used to be poor. Gazov had the same story, right? Like he was poor, and then he had like innate abilities and trained them and honed them masterfully, and then eventually was able to rise himself. This is like a recurring story in this kingdom. This kingdom is like kind of shit, to be completely honest. Which is the whole thing is excellent writing as you get further into the story, because then like when something happens later on, it's more like, okay, this is probably a better situation, to be completely honest. Anyway, but Brand at this point is probably the second best fighter in like the whole kingdom, right? And he's like working for these bandit guys because he's just been here doing stuff. He worked hard to get to the duel, and then he like barely lost, and he wanted to be best, so he trained. He fights with a katana. And so he goes, guys are getting killed and they're running, and so he goes out to find Shaltear and the vampire brides. Shaltear sends the vampires out, so they skirmish with Brand, but Brand is stronger than the vampire, and so Shaltear's like, ooh, and so she starts fighting with him, and then he uses his most powerful attack, which does nothing to her. And then he's shown in anime charges past his limit, like he like true insight, fucking, Super Saiyan mode and like does like a super attack, and then because the first time he attacked, she just like grabbed the blade before it could hit him, and this time she parries it with like the nail of like her pinky finger, and she's like, "Is this all you got?" They're pretty tired, and then she taunts him some more, and he freaks out and runs away. We then switch over to the rest of the bandits who are all like held up behind like a barricade, and they're like watching and waiting, and they don't hear anything. And then they see Bran come, and he leaps over the barricade and keeps running. And they're like, "What's wrong with that guy?" And then the leader of like the bandits who's left is like, "Oh, we're fucked." And then Shaltear walks in, and they start firing crossbow bolts at her. And then they all go inside her and stuff. And then she like just takes them out. And then she leaps over the barricades and kills the shit out of everybody. And then at this point, she's starting to succumb to blood frenzy, and she's not thinking straight. She's just starting to kill everybody and absorbing their blood. She then heads out the back, and this whole thing she had like, again, they're not scouts, but they were like, make sure there's no other entrances, and they like scouted around a little bit, and they're like, no, there's only one entrance in this place. And when they talked to the guy that they turned into a vampire, like once I got all his memories, he's like, no, there's only one entrance in and out, but there was a secret entrance that only Brand and like the actual head of the bandits knew about. And so she gets super mad when she finds out. She yells at her vampire brides, and then also they find a bunch of like sex slaves or whatever, and this like pisses Shaltear off even more, because she's like, what the fuck, man? Like there's so much, then none of this is going to plan. All this stuff's like, there's all this like new information and other shit she doesn't like, and she's pretty pissed off about the whole situation. And then at some point her blood frenzy kind of dies down a little bit, and she remembers that she wasn't supposed to kill everybody. She was actually supposed to capture humans, and she's like, oh no, fuck, I'm gonna disappoint Lord Ainz. I gotta go catch that guy because I'm trying to find guys capable of martial arts so I can do it. And then one of her vampire brides comes up to her and is like, oh, hey, there's a band of adventurers coming. And she's like, oh, good, I'll go take care of them. So she goes to fight them, and we find out that one of them is the redheaded chick from the second book, from the last book, who got the potion from Ainz. And it's like her party of like Ironplaid adventurers or whatever. Anyway, so Shaltear tears the shit out of him. Then the girl uses the potion, the red potion she never sold, on Shaltear, which actually does some damage because, you know, she's undead, and so healing magic like hurts her. And so Shaltear hypnotizes her to get information. And then she finds out that there was a ranger that was one of the members that was supposed to hide back. And if like anything happened, he was going to run back to Arantel to like warn everybody about something going on. And so she gets like super, it's like, oh fuck. And she's like, hey, vampire bride, take this chick and put her with the sex slaves we're going to take back to Nazarick later. And then she summons like some kin, and kin for her is like wolves, like a wolf pack. So this vampire wolf pack, and she sends them out to find this guy. And so they're rushing about and all that stuff, and then they all get killed. And so she's like, oh, that must be where I need to go. So she is over there, and she finds a much more powerful enemy. Anyway, not too tough. She kills the shit out of them too. But one of them controlled some sort of legendary artifact, and right before she dies, they use it on her. And that gives us to an intermission. And intermission is like completely, it's an intermission. Like it's literally like elsewhere at the capital, we see Gazov, and he's in a council room. The king's there. There's some nobles. We learn a few things. The empire is slowly chipping away at this kingdom. They have a standing army while the kingdom uses conscripts only. And so their young emperor is also a very solid fighter. He's very strong. And then a lot of the nobles in the kingdom kind of want the kingdom to fall because they feel like they'll keep the positions if the empire takes over, which may or may not be true. Gazov is pretty convinced it's not going to be true. But they think that that's how that's going to work off. And they hate Gazov for being there because he's from the lower classes and he's so powerful. And there's this Marquis Raven who's a super asshole, and he's super important later on. We also find out the king is old and injured, but that his sons are bitches. And so he doesn't trust them to take over the kingdom because they're just going to like hand it over to the nobles who are going to hand it over to the empire, and that's going to be that. And so he's like holding on, and Gazov's helping him with that. They then, after the council meeting, him and Gazov are walking, and they're just talking about life and talking about the princesses and the golden princess and stuff. And they meet her, and she's super fucking hot and also super carefree. She loves helping the lower classes, and she's guarded by this guy who like grew up in a gutter and was an orphan that she essentially like adopted as a pet. And he's a great fighter, even though he has no martial arts. It's all grit. And that they kind of like each other, or it seems like they like each other. We find out much later that the princess he literally is just like a pet to her. And that she's like super crazy. But right now it just seems like, oh, she's in love, but he can't be with her because, you know, the noble household and the royal lineage and all that stuff. Anyway, and the king's like, oh, I wish I could let them be in love, but, you know, I can't because of shit and whatnot. And so the king wishes they could be together, which wraps up that intermission. Ainz meets up with Albedo back in the throne room, and he has like a way to access like some sort of status menu, so he can see his status of all the minions of Nazarick, and see that while Shaltear is like red status or something. Oh no, it's not red. So she's not faded out. She's still on the list, but now it's black, which means she's hostile. And so Albedo gets a plan together to go and get Shaltear. We learn that that Shaltear is like the strongest or the second strongest member floor guardian. There's like this. Sometimes I talk about Gigantus being the strongest. He's some guy we haven't met yet. We don't met him for a while. But Albedo knows her and her weaknesses, so has a perfect team put together to take advantage of all the weaknesses. Ainz thinks that her rebellion is not intentional and that it is magically compelled. Albedo is like, come on, let's do this. And Ainz is like, hold up, wait a minute. We want to make sure that she's not being compelled first before they go ahead and like go and destroy her, because he wants to like gather more information and stuff. So Ainz decides that he's going to go with Albedo to meet her older sister, who's the boss of the Ice Tomb level, which is 5, I think they said. They enter, and at some point, Ainz says he loves all his minions, which causes Albedo to like lose her fucking mind and jump so high she crashes into the ceiling, which gets a bunch of like the guardians of like the floor, not like the floor guardian, but like the guards of this place to like come out. And Ainz is like, he like waves his hand away, and they're like, oh, okay, and they take off. At some point, also, he picks up like a doll of some sort, and then they enter Nagita's lair, who's Albedo's older sister. An older sister is in like the person who created Albedo also created Nagita. And so when they enter, it's like super creepy. There's like all these babies crawling around. It's like Japanese horror, right? It's like all these babies crawling around, and there's like this hideous woman who's over a crib, and then she freaks out and grabs like the baby from the crib and throws it against the walls, killing it, and then creating like more ghost babies and stuff. And then she turns and like screams at them. It's like super creepy and stuff. But then Ainz hands her the new baby doll, and she's like, "Oh, my precious baby," and like puts it in the crib. Is like, "All right, how can I help you guys?" What the fuck? Apparently, Nagita has like the best tracking ability out of anybody, and so she easily finds Shaltear. They chat for a bit, and then Nabe calls. There are some adventurers that are looking for Momon for some help because of a vampire issue. And so at this point, instead of like just dismissing her like he had before, which caused the Shaltear problem in the first place, according to him, he considers his options and decides he needs to go check. And he needs to go check on like what the Adventurers Guild wants, or what these people are summoning him for, because Shaltear is just like floating in the woods or something with all her god tier items equipped, and so she should be fine. Probably. Anyway, he heads over to her Rantel. After he leaves, the sisters talk about a younger sister that also exists, and Negrita is like, you better watch out for her. Our creator did not make all of us the same. And I was like, yeah, it should be fine. I got to deal with this Shaltear issue, and then I'll think about our younger sister some more. Ainz meets up with the Adventurers Guild Master over as Momon. So there's the Adventurer Guild Master, the Wizards Guild Master, the Mayor, and 3 other leaders of mithril plated adventure groups. The adventurers are all very skeptical of Momon, who is now a mithril plate adventurer, as we discussed earlier. And there's a discussion about what happened in the previous book about the adventures and how they worked so hard to be mithril plate, and this guy just like showed up as a copper plate and like took care of some issue, and like maybe he was the cause of the issue, blah blah blah. Anyway, it gets shut down pretty quick, and then they talk about the vampire issue. So Momon, he lies, and so his story is the whole reason he's here is to hunt down this vampire, so he should go alone and take care of it because he drove him out of like their homeland, but then she has like something they need, or she stole something, so he came, and that's like you know, it kind of hand waves away a lot of things, like he's gonna go over there, and that there's like he needs to get like revenge or something, and then anyone else who's around what they fight are gonna die, and then one of the adventurers who's been grumpy the whole time is like, no, we're gonna go with you, and then Momon's like, if you come, you will die. And he's like, no, we'll be fine. And he's like, all right, well, if you want to come, YOLO. They're definitely gonna die, though, probably by Ainz hands. Anyway, at some point, they're like, well, how are you gonna take care of this thing? It's so strong and all this stuff, and everyone's gonna die and whatnot. He pulls out this crystal, and the crystal has level 8 magic. And if you remember, there's like no one, like most people, like level 3 magic is pretty impressive. Right? Like very few people can do level 3 magic, and then like level 6 magic is like the topsist, and then level 7 magic is like mythical, like completely out of this world, like the 7 heroes or the 12 heroes or whatever that like brought magic into this world like 600 years ago. They only had like level like tier 7 magic, and so this tier 8 magic is like beyond comprehension. And so like the obviously the guild master for the Wizards Guild is like over the moon, and he's like salivating and like seems like he wants to fuck the stone, to be completely honest. So they're like, all right, well, if you got that, you should be fine. So you can go take care of it. And then he's going to bring the other group with him. And he calls Shaltear like, oh, so what's the name of the vampire? And he's like, Pom Pom Ko. And they're like, oh, yes, Pom Pom Ko. Ko's like it's like a miss almost. Like, so there's a lot of honorifics in it, right? But when you're talking about women, sometimes you like a lot of like female oriented stuff ends in ko. I can't remember why. It's been like 20 plus years since I say Japanese, but it comes up in this book. Like that's specifically why he ends it with ko, and he's like, oh, that's so nerdy. And then he leaves, and then the mayor and the masters, the Adventurers Guild master and the Wizards master, I'll talk about Momon, if they can really trust him. If it's the whole thing with the undead is kind of shady, and where he came from, and how he just showed up, and everything's been crazy since then, and stuff. But they're like, hey, we got to trust him now, at least for this. A bit later, Ainz is traveling with the guys and Nabe. They're not all rude, just the main guy who continues to be a total asshole, but some of the guys are kind of friendly. They talk about Hamsky, which he's riding, to his embarrassment, but everyone's like super impressed by it again. Then they get to the forest without Shaltear and dismount. At some point, Hamsky's like, hey, there's someone else here. And then Albedo steps out, and she's wearing like the same armor that she wore in the first book, which is the same style of armor that Momon wears. And then Momon or / Ainz is like, hey, capture all these guys and take them in for experimentation. And they're like, Nani desu ka? And so she like wipes them out, and then one of the guys like makes a break for it. Like the leader guy who's a total ass, he's like, I knew it, I'm gonna use this information. He's working with the vampire and all this stuff. And Ainz makes the comment, he's like, when I told you would die on this, I didn't mean she would kill you, I meant I would kill you. And then he gets caught up by Mari and Albedo, and they're like, and they kind of beat him up a little bit, and then it's like, off to experimentation land for you. And then Ainz mentions that, oh yeah, he mentions that he did warn them. Anyway, let's see, the leader, oh, okay, so that continues. He runs away, Mari catches him, he thinks Mari's a little girl, or Mari's the boy, or is the girl. Oh, that's right, and then Mari smashes him in the head with a staff. Sorry, I got ahead of myself. They grabbed up the other guys, and then Ainz he's like, all right, things should be good. I'm going to get ready for Shaltear. So he does all this stuff to like prep. He gets out of his armor, and he's just wearing like a robe, essentially, like not even his fancy robe, just like a pauper's robe or something, as he prepares to take on Shaltear. So Albedo and Ainz find Shaltear. She's just like hanging out. He gauges that she's under some sort of mind control spell, but it doesn't make any sense because she's undead and she's made a psychic attack, so it must be some sort of like non-psychic mind control ability, which he thinks about more later as well. And that the person using the mind control spell or artifact must have died at the exact same time, which is why she has no commands to give her. She's just kind of hanging out there. And so then he's about to like use his god tier item that like grants wishes, and there's a whole conversation about just like this. It's like this ring he has, and it has like 3 stars, and it's like the more you sacrifice experience points or something, the greater the wish, and yada yada yada. There's like all this whole like long explanation about it, and he doesn't even use it. Because he senses something that like the wish isn't going to do anything or something, and then he's like, we got to get out of here. So then, so that's when they head to Nazarick and orders all the guardians back so they can all be checked for mind control, and then he preps. So yes, I'm sorry, I keep getting ahead of myself, I'm sorry. They head to the treasury. It's very impressive. Albedo's never been there before, and 2 of the Pleiades as well. Like the treasury is just for like the masters, and like the guardian of the treasury, which is, what's his name? Pandora's actor, who's kind of like the floor guardian that Ainz made. So they talk about the treasure, everything. They enter some of like the weapon storage. There's like piles of gold and all this crazy stuff. Ainz is gathering weapons and items and world items and all this stuff. So we prepare for Shaltear. And then Pandora's actor shows up, and he's a real goofball, this motherfucker. And he's wearing like some fancy uniform, and he can essentially impersonate anybody like that. That's his thing, acting, right? So he's kind of like a changeling, but he's kind of goofy in his like normal state, and he's like saying goofy stuff, and Ainz is getting like super embarrassed about the whole situation. Like he's total cringe. And so he doesn't want any like one-time use items. He just wants items that it can be continual uses, but he wants to gather all this like special magical stuff and whatnot. And they talk about how like in combat, like in fighting combat, Shaltear is like way better than Ainz because he's a caster, and that all his whole thing is like ghost magic, and that she's pretty much immune to like most, if not all, like ghost magic style spells and stuff. And so he's at a super disadvantage when trying to fight Shaltear because he's gonna have to use all these items and everything to like really get up on her. Since the way he's designed, like Shaltear is like his perfect foil to be like, as in she is like essentially built to fight Ainz. So it seems like it's going to be very one-sided. But we all know there's like 15 more volumes of this or more. Like Ainz clearly wins. But and they talk a little bit about her design and about stuff that's going on with her based on the time, because she's the only guardian that died in that big raid that took place before like the guild, before like they switched over from Yggdrasil and whatnot. they then get into like a little bit of a spat about Ainz going by himself because Albedo wants to go or send help and all this stuff. And Ainz is like, no, I'm going to go by myself. I got to take care of this. I don't need anyone else kind of interfering, which is pretty much what he said before at the guild. But he like means it, not just like him by himself, or not just like him and his group, but like him by himself. He then teleports over to where Shaltear is, and he casts all these like defensive spells and these trap spells and everything to get ready for the battle. And he's checking to make sure there's no ambushes around or anything. Meanwhile, back at the Tomb of Nazarick, Demiurge is livid that Albedo let him go by himself to fight. Albedo is very calm, and then Demiurge is about to attack Albedo before Cocytus stops him. They talk about how Ainz's chances and everything else that's going on. And then we head back to Ainz, and he approaches Shaltear and thinks about how she is not moving. He casts a ton... Oh, sorry. Okay, he does that. Okay. Then there's a huge shonen anime magic battle between Ainz and Shaltear. She gets confused why she's fighting Ainz, and then she's like, no, I feel compelled to do so, and all this stuff. And they go back and forth. They chit-chat and argue. And then we get her perspective for like the first half of the battle, and it looks like she's winning because of her immunities and abilities versus Ainz's class. And then he says something about this being a one-sided fight, and at that point we switch over to his perspective. So they go back and forth some more. Shaltear summons a copy of herself and a bunch of minions so she can kill them with her lance to like absorb life and stuff, and then Ainz casts a Sharknado spell to kill them. Like, no fucking joke, a Sharknado. Then she charges him. He uses his ultimate ability, no life or something, so kills everything in the area that's not even undead, and turns the whole area into a desert to destroy her like duplicate. And then she strikes him again, but he blocks it with this guild level armor that one of his guildmates got in a tournament in Intercell. Like, only none of these existed in the whole world. Meanwhile, the Guardians of the Tomb are all amazed at his ability and foresight and all his planning and stuff. They fight some more with Ainz summoning his old guildmate's weapons to batter down Shaltear and get her life down and get her mana down and everything. And she keeps thinking she has a chance against Ainz, but we all know that what we signed up for here. So there's no way he's going to even come close to losing. So he keeps getting one over her, and then at the end he hesitates, which could have caused a problem, but she hesitates as well. She feels like she hears somebody speaking to her, which seems to be like her creator, and so she's, before using like a superpower attack against him, she like hesitates, and that allows Ainz's like powerful attack that destroys all undead to like finish. And then for a moment before she like fades out of existence, she sees the person who used the God tier item to mind control her, and again, there's most mind control spells are psychic, which undead are immune to, but there's other kinds as well apparently. And then Aura is getting like super upset as she's watching from like far away. Her and her brother came to watch because her and Shaltear are actually like best friends, even though they like pretend to fight all the time, as we discussed like previously. But because that's the way they were designed, but they're actually like super best friends. And so she's mad that her super best friend is like an idiot and like got caught up in this thing and all this stuff. And so it's like a real hard pill for her to swallow. And Mari's like checking on her and making sure they're okay. And then they like clear out and head back to the tomb. Back at the tomb, Demiurge convinces Ainz to let the Guardians take care of Shaltear if she is still mind control, because they're going to cast resurrection magic on her. So he's like, all right. So he casts resurrection magic and brings her back, and it takes like 500 million gold or some crazy amount. And when she comes back, she's naked. He picks her up, covers her, and she doesn't remember anything about the mind control or any of this stuff. She gets an earful from the other floor guardians, but then Ainz forgives her. He says that it's really his fault. They talk about how they need to secure the defenses of Nazarick, that there's more intense stuff going on here. And then they also talk about how humans can only be resurrected as level 40 undead, which is really not strong enough. So even the strong ones, but what about demi-humans? Maybe they're different. And then someone mentions that there's a whole lizardman like group nearby that maybe they can go check that out. And he's like, all right, good. Later on, a mithril adventurer heads to the guild in Arantel, and he's like, there's no quests here. And it's like, we learned that being a mithril adventurer essentially like sets you up for life. Like the money you can get from like one quest will be like more than you need your entire life. But some people like this guy, he just wants to go on adventuring because he enjoys it. So he's not like too hurt up, but when he shows up, it's like, there's no mithril or higher quests available. They've all been taken care of. And who they've been taken care of? Momon. And he recalls the story about how Momon defeated the vampire and it killed this entire other party died, and it was super tragic, and Momon's seen as this great hero. And then he walks in, he's got adamantite adventurer, which I think is the highest level, and that's why there's no more quests. So he asks like, hey, are there any more quests for me? And it's like, no, well, call me, you know where I'm at. And then as he's walking out, the adventurer overhears him talking to himself, and he talks about activating the Guardians to send them out. And that wraps up Volume 3 of Overlord, the light novel. So go ahead, like, share, subscribe, comment, and I'll catch you guys later.